It's fascinating how people can underestimate the consequences of their actions. My name is Alex, and if I had to sum myself up, I'd say I'm someone who loves deeply and is generally polite. I'm always striving to give my partner everything they desire. It took me 2 marriages to realize that being reserved and giving your all to the person you love can lead to resentment and disrespect. I won't let that happen again. These entitled individuals believe they can get away with things secretly, thinking that as long as they aren't caught, everything's fine. They try to hide their guilt in various ways until they eventually get caught. Then they suddenly feel remorse and claim they didn't want their partner to find out and get hurt. Do they even hear themselves? What are we supposed to think when they say they never intended for us to discover their actions? It's like they're admitting to doing something behind our backs and are only sorry they got caught. That's quite an insult. I'm convinced these people can't grasp basic empathy. Zoe and I met after we both came out of dysfunctional relationships. She had spent 3 years with her ex, Jack, who left her for a younger, more attractive woman. Zoe was left heartbroken and with low self-esteem because the man she loved dumped her. She never really got over Jack, and that always bothered me to some extent. I'm Alex, and I'm 6 years older than Zoe. I was married for 5 years to an incredibly attractive, seductive woman named Clara, who made my world spin. I was deeply in love with her and expected to spend my life with her. However, she had affairs behind my back during a time when I was completely infatuated with her. It took me a year to discover her infidelity, and it hurt me deeply. I left her and swore I'd never allow it to happen again. After that, I realized that trust would be an issue for me in any new relationship. Zoe and I were aware of each other's past baggage. I helped her work through her self-esteem issues as she put in the effort to improve her body and appearance. She spent hours shopping for new clothes, getting beauty treatments, and playing tennis. With my support, she transformed into a confident, attractive woman. In return, Zoe, knowing my history, helped me regain my confidence. She constantly reassured me that I was her one and only love, and she always made me feel fortunate to have found her. Every day, she expressed her love for me and ensured all my desires were fulfilled. Our life felt vibrant, and we made love at least 4 times a week. We continued to share kisses and cuddles on the couch, and our love for each other remained strong. We even began discussing the possibility of having children. We truly felt like soulmates. Life seemed great. Or at least that's what I thought. A week after celebrating our 6th anniversary, my life took an unexpected turn. I noticed Zoe wearing a dress I hadn't seen before, and she looked stunning. That was unusual for a typical late weekday morning. To clarify, I wasn't secretly watching my wife, but we had a home video surveillance system that I occasionally checked when I was bored at work. I found solace in watching our dog, Luna, especially after enduring my stressful job as a bond broker. However, on that particular morning, I grew curious. There she was, the love of my life, dressed in a very short, alluring red dress and extremely high heels. Her hair was perfectly done, and her makeup looked flawless. It had been years since I'd seen her look this attractive, and it made me feel uneasy. So, I decided to call her and inquire about her plans. I dialed her number. "Hey, babe, just sitting here thinking about you. How's your day going? Tennis today?" Hey, honey, I miss you. I don't have anything scheduled today. No tennis because Claire hurt her ankle, so I've decided to take the day off. Oh, that's unfortunate. I know how much you enjoy playing tennis. So, what's on your agenda then? Well, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't made any specific plans. Perhaps I'll head to the gym. Would you be interested in meeting for lunch? I can swing by and pick you up. That's very considerate, babe. But not today. I'm feeling a bit bloated and not particularly hungry right now. I'll just have a protein shake at the gym. I'll see you tonight. Love you. She didn't say her usual I love you when we parted ways, and I'm pretty sure she noticed because I always say it before ending our calls. She lied to me, and I needed to figure out why. Some things are difficult to handle, but even though I trusted Zoe after all these years, I had a GPS tracker in her car, something I rarely used. Initially, I'd installed it for security purposes. I could feel the weight of her words pressing against my chest. Uneventful day, she said, as though nothing had happened. As I processed her response, I could see it for what it was. Just another lie in the chain of deception she'd been weaving. Her smile, that familiar warmth in her voice, everything about her seemed so calm, so unaffected. I could feel the fury bubbling inside me, but I couldn't let it spill over just yet. I took a deep breath, allowing the anger to settle for now. Really? I asked, my voice steady, though the tension in my jaw was impossible to miss. No unusual encounters? Nothing out of the ordinary? Zoe's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered, her expression smoothing back into that practiced, loving mask she wore so well. Nope, she said, fiddling with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. Just a regular day, like I told you. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The subtle shake of her hand, the slight tightness around her eyes. How had I missed it all this time? The signs were there, clear as day. But every time I questioned her, every time I doubted her, she turned it around and made me feel crazy. My mind flashed back to what I'd seen earlier. Her hand in Billy's, the kiss, the way she leaned into him. And yet, here she was, lying to my face as if nothing had changed. My hand gripped my glass tighter. Zoe, I said, the name leaving my lips like a warning. I saw you today. Her eyes flickered for a split second, and in that moment, I knew she knew I was onto her. Her breath caught, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then, her voice came out soft, almost pleading. What are you talking about? I leaned back in my chair, looking at her carefully. You're not the woman I thought you were, Zoe. I've seen enough. Her face went pale. She shifted uncomfortably. The smile gone now, replaced by a look I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Was it fear? I couldn't tell anymore. Alex, please, I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she started, her voice trembling just slightly. I swear, it's not what you think. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I set my glass down and looked at her, taking in everything, the way her eyes avoided mine, the way she wouldn't meet my gaze directly, the way her words stumbled over each other. Finally, I spoke. I watched you, Zoe. I saw you meet him, Billy. The name hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I saw you kiss him, laugh with him, spend time with him. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The silence between us was suffocating. I could see the truth in her eyes now, even if she wouldn't admit it. The guilt, the regret, she had nowhere left to hide. "Zoe," I said softly. My voice strained with a mix of hurt and frustration. "You knew how much I hated him. You knew how much he hurt you. And yet here you are, with him again. I can't just ignore it." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at me, but I could tell they weren't just tears of regret. They were the tears of someone trying to escape the mess they'd made. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "No, Zoe. Don't. Don't try to justify this." The pain that had been building in me for so long finally began to spill over. I couldn't hold it back anymore. My voice cracked as I said, "I wanted to believe in us. I wanted to trust you. But you've shattered that trust. And I don't know how to pick up, the pieces anymore." She reached out across the table, but I pulled my chair back, creating distance between us. There was no closeness left anymore. No bond to bridge the gap between us. "I'm sorry, Alex," she whispered, but her words felt hollow now, like empty promises. I shook my head, standing up from the table. I couldn't look at her anymore, not without seeing the woman who had betrayed me. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo what you've done. I turned toward the door, feeling a wave of finality wash over me. The marriage I had once cherished was over. There was no going back from this. "Goodbye, Zoe," I said, my voice heavy with finality. And with that, I left. Zoe sat there, trembling slightly, her face a mixture of disbelief and regret. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but the tears wouldn't stop falling. For the first time, she seemed to fully comprehend the depth of what she had done, not just in her actions, but in the hurt she had caused. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I thought I could handle it. I thought it was just harmless. I didn't think it would hurt you this much." I leaned back in my chair, feeling an overwhelming mix of sadness and frustration. "Harmless? Zoe, you dressed up for him. You kissed him in front of everyone, and you let him get that close to you. You took off your wedding ring for God's sake. Do you even hear what you're saying?" She sniffled, her hands clutching at the edge of the table like she needed something to hold on to. "I was just confused. Billy came back into my life, and for a moment, it felt like I was the person I used to be before everything changed. I wasn't thinking about you or our vows. It wasn't supposed to mean anything." "That's the problem, Zoe," I said, my voice now tinged with exhaustion. "You weren't thinking about us, about me. I don't know when it started. But the woman I loved wouldn't do something like this. The woman I loved would never break my trust." She bit her lip, clearly struggling to hold it together. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could fix things in my own way. I didn't know how to talk to you about what I was feeling. Billy just made me feel good about myself again. He made me feel wanted." I shook my head, trying to process her words. "So, you thought it was okay to go behind my back and kiss him? Flirt with him? Act like we didn't exist? Do you really believe that's just a harmless way of feeling good about yourself?" She looked at me then, her eyes filled with regret, but also with a bit of defiance. "I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand, Alex. I know I messed up, but you need to understand that I was lost. Our marriage, it wasn't the same. I needed someone to see me, to remind me of who I used to be." "You're right," I said softly, my voice tight with emotion. "It wasn't the same. But I never wanted it to come to this. I wanted to fight for us. I wanted us to get through right side everything together, but I can't fight for a marriage when you've already given up on it. She stood up from the table, her movement slow and heavy, and walked over to me. Alex, please, I never meant for this to happen. I love you. I do. I love you. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right. I stood as well, stepping back as she reached out to touch me. You don't know how to fix it? Zoe, you can't fix it. Not after everything that's happened. Not after you chose him over me. Her face fell, and she turned away from me, wiping the tears from her face. I never thought it would end like this, she whispered. Neither did I said, the finality in my words hanging heavy in the air between us. But it has, Zoe, and no amount of apologies will change what you've done. I didn't know what else to say. There was nothing left. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with was now someone I didn't recognize. The love was gone, replaced by a bitter ache that I couldn't erase. Zoe stood there, silent and broken, her shoulders trembling. I took one last look at her, the woman who had once been my whole world, and quietly walked away. Zoe's life had come crashing down in a way that was almost tragically inevitable. In trying to reclaim something from her past, she'd not only destroyed her marriage, but set in motion a series of events that would tear her life apart. The self-inflicted consequences of her actions were so deep that even if she could somehow forgive herself, she would never truly be able to undo the damage. After the divorce, the pain of losing someone who had once been her, everything became unbearable. Billy, the man she had tried to win back in a misguided attempt to feel validated, had vanished when things became real, leaving her alone and burdened with a future she hadn't anticipated. The pressure of motherhood, especially in a situation she hadn't prepared for or even wanted, coupled with her emotional and mental breakdown, was too much. Losing the baby in that tragic fall only compounded her grief. At some point, Zoe must have realized the gravity of everything she'd lost. It wasn't just Alex she had pushed away. She had pushed away her own happiness, her own sense of worth, and the future she had once imagined for herself. The man she had married had loved her deeply, but she had failed him, not once, but repeatedly, and now she had to live with the painful aftermath. In the end, the harsh truth is that actions, once taken, could never truly be taken back. The loss of trust was something that couldn't be rebuilt with apologies or empty promises. Alex had moved on, as difficult as it was, and had learned to guard his heart from further pain. Zoe's regret, as deep as it was, couldn't change the past. It was a tragic tale of choices, consequences, and the irreparable damage that betrayal leaves behind. Zoe's life now stood as a reminder of what happens when you allow selfishness and fleeting moments of ego to overshadow the things that truly matter. In the end, it wasn't just her marriage to Alex that was destroyed. It was the very foundation of who she thought she was. The man she thought would fill a void left by her failures, Billy, had vanished when the reality of responsibility kicked in. And now, she was left to face her own demons. It wasn't just the baby she had lost. It was her entire sense of self, her dignity, and her hope for redemption. She'd been looking for validation from the wrong places. In life, every choice and decision we make has a lasting impact on our future. The story of Zoe teaches us that decisions driven by temporary gratification or selfish desires can not only harm others, but can also destroy our own lives. Zoe tries to justify her actions by convincing herself that they were harmless, but in the end, she couldn't escape the consequences of her choices. The story also highlights that while facing the truth and acknowledging our mistakes is crucial, the effects of our past actions cannot be undone.